Cool. Hi, Anthony. Thank you for coming on. Welcome to the podcast. How are you?
I'm doing very well. Thank you very much. How are you?
Yeah, we're good over here in sunny old England at the moment. Having the worst
Nice.
spring on record, I believe.
Oh, good. Yeah.
Yeah, nice.
Nice.
So, can we just start for our listeners with just a general introduction where you just tell us what you do and about it's Instagram that I originally followed you on. So, just a little bit about what you do, what your background is, and a bit about your Instagram account.
Sure. Well, I'm an American medical doctor. I currently practice in Australia, and I'm completely separate to my medical practice. I've had an interest into diet and nutrition, how that affects health and chronic disease, for my own athletic career prior to medical school, and then as a doctor, I've found that it's actually one of the better tools to help reverse or ameliorate the so-called chronic diseases that we are facing now. So I've tried to roll that into my current practice now. I normally am uh, a neurosurgical resident, so studying surgery of the brain and spine and neurological system. But I just find that dietary approaches, diet and lifestyle have such a profound impact on people's health that it's something that you have to include in your practice as a clinician in any field because it's applicable to every field. And so that's just something that I've been very passionate about for a number of years. I've done a lot of research and read a lot of studies, just dug into this for many hours, for many years, and it's just something that I think is very important to let people know about. So I use my Instagram platform and my YouTube channel and podcast to sort of get that message out there and just let people know what the facts are about actual nutrition and health and how they can be healthy without a bunch of doctors and medicines for the rest of their life.
So what made, as a doctor, then obviously the doctors that I have experience with, they all want to get you on statins or they want to get you on medication, on blood thinners, on blood pressure tablet, whatever it is. I have never had a conversation with a general practitioner that says, actually, let's just look at what you're eating. What got you along that train of thought?
Well, I started thinking about nutrition from the standpoint of our biological design and our evolutionary past, and realizing that humans have been eating a certain way for millions of years, and the way that zookeepers find the right diet for a jaguar or a zebra is not to do some sort of survey analysis of veterinarians and see what they think. It's to just look, so what the hell are these things eating? And how is their health in the wild, and then you put them in captivity and you just replicate that. And it's very clear that when animals are fed something outside of their biological design, something that they don't eat in the wild the mainstay of their diet, maybe they're forced to eat something else if they're starving, but generally, you have food available, or you don't make it. And that's how you figure this out. And when animals eat something that they're not designed to eat, they get sick. But what do they get sick with? They get obesity, heart disease, liver disease, diabetes, cancer, autoimmune diseases, arthritis, all the exact same things that we get. And that's what zookeepers will say. That's why there's signs at the zoo that say, don't feed the animals. It makes them very sick. And to eat something that they don't normally eat. And so they say, no, 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 don't give them human food because they'll get human diseases. Well, what the hell is a human disease? It's all those things that I just listed, all those things that account for 95 or 90% plus of all the diseases and illnesses that we treat as a mainstay in Western medicine, and or any sort of medicine. That's just the most common things we treat. And 90% of the deaths are caused by these non-communicable chronic diseases in the Western countries. And 74% of the deaths around the world are these non-communicable chronic diseases like heart disease and cancer and diabetes and mental health disorders, all these sorts of things, autoimmunity. So that tells me that that's a cause and effect relationship. You feed those animals that stuff, they get those diseases, those same diseases that we get. And then we eat that food and we get those same diseases. This isn't that hard to figure out. We give dogs and cats kibble and nonsense that they're not designed. Oh, but it says science diet, therefore it's science did it. Yeah, no, but science says that they should eat meat. That's what the science says. Some assholes, just slapped science on the name as a name on their bag so they could sell kibble and cheap crap to dogs. That's not science. Science is that canines and felines are designed to eat meat and do best on that, and they get sick when they don't do that. So when you look at our biology and our nutrition, that's really all you need to do. What do humans eat? What have humans been eating for millions of years? For the last 2 million years, we've been apex predators, top of the food chain. Apex predators are by definition carnivores. They eat meat as a mainstay. If maybe you had some tubers or something, if you weren't able to get a kill on a hunt, but we're actually extremely successful hunters. We're actually termed super predators because we take out more apex predators than any other apex predator. We're actually, I mean, we hunt, eat, and have ownership over every single form of life, be it in the sky, on the earth, or in the sea. We've just completely dominated all of them. So how are we anything but an apex predator, a super predator? And we've been doing this for millions of years. We had mammoths. We had evidence of mammoth hunts where we sort of would do like a mammoth drop where we'd scare them over a cliff and they'd crash and burn, and then we'd use stone tools to carve them up and have meat for. I mean, you think we need tubers and roots and things like that? Oh, we just don't have enough mammoth. No, no, you have enough for the next few years, until those herds come back. And so that's what we ate. And it wasn't until the megafauna died out, some people say that it's from overhunting, but I don't really buy that, because it was at the same time on every continent, everywhere. Just all the megafauna gone in an instant. So that doesn't make sense. There's some sort of event, that's some sort of mass extinction event. And when that happened, humans had to look to alternatives. And that's when you started looking to agriculture and started looking to animal husbandry and making dairy and getting milk. We needed more fat. The bigger animals had more fat, and we need fat as a species. And so we weren't getting that as much. And so it's actually not good for us to get most of our energy calories from protein. You need the protein to make proteins in your body. You want something else as an energy source. And primarily you need that from fat, but carbs will do in a pinch, but it's not good for us. I mean, we got very sick after that. There's a clear line in the fossil record before and after agriculture. And this is that independent time. So, 10,000 years ago, then 7,000 years ago here, and 6,000 years ago there, and 100 years ago in Australia and North America, when the Native Americans and the Plains Indians were just eating bison. Bison herds were wiped out. At that time, they were the tallest population of human beings alive on Earth, and they were very healthy. They weren't getting all of these chronic diseases that other people get. That's why they call them Western diseases, diseases of the West, and because only Westerners were getting them. Native Americans weren't getting them, and by their own records, take that for what you will, they were living to be 110, 115, 120 or longer. And we think, oh, well, they're just making that up. But at the same time, now we know as geneticists that humans are actually designed to live 120 years on average, meaning that if you just don't mess up and stay out of your own way, that you'll live to 120 without doing anything special. That's how you're designed. And that's what they were doing.
On 120.
I know, I was just thinking
healthily.
whether
Healthily. No, but it is healthy, right? You have to be. You can't be a Stone Age nomad with a pack on your back following the buffalo herds day in and day out at 120 if you're not healthy, right? I mean, you're not sitting in a nursing home turning to dust for 40 years, just getting smaller and crunched up. Think of animals at the zoo. They're not getting arthritis and osteoporosis and dementia and just sitting in the corner drooling for the last few years of their life until the zookeeper just, offs them or something like that. They're live, healthy adults until one day they just sort of slow down and they just sort of go to sleep and they don't wake up, and yeah.
You say that about the animals in the zoo. It's really triggered something for me, that, like, why do we not think of that? And I was thinking the other day, I've just got a puppy, and I was looking, and it was saying about onions being really poisonous for dogs.
Oh, right. Now I know you've got something to say on plants being poisonous.
No, but actually, only the other day I was thinking, well, if it's really poisonous for the dog, is it all right for me? And I couldn't kind of work that out. So I really wanted to ask you about that and about your opinion on plants being poisonous. Is that right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's how they defend themselves. You know, all living things have a defense. All life has a defense, or else they're not alive anymore. 95% or 97% of all life is extinct now, right? So the anything alive now has gone through the gauntlet of evolution and has been able to survive. These are all the survivors. So every plant that you ever come across, that's a survivor. That's something that was able to defend itself and reproduce more often than not. More often it was able to reproduce as opposed to getting eaten and destroyed. So animals can run away or fight back. That's one of their defenses, or they have camouflage or other sorts of means of defense. Some have little stingers or venom. Great. Plants don't have those kinetic defenses where they can run away or fight back. So they're just stationary. So they're just sitting ducks. They're just idiots, just sitting there for anyone to come after them, right? So why are they still here, right? Plants make up the vast majority of life on Earth, and yet they're under constant assault by animals and insects. So obviously they have to have defenses. They make about 1 million different defensive chemicals. So these can be directly toxic. They can be indirectly toxic. They can be hormonally disruptive. They can screw with your fertility so that you're just sick and unwell and you just don't have kids. And then you just don't have another generation of little
Yes,
brats coming around eating that plant. And the other things that are anti-nutrients that block out the absorption and digestion of nutrients. So you're just not going to thrive. You're not going to get proper nutrition. You're going to be malnourished and you're out in the wild. It's rough out there. So if you're not malnourished, you're going to be at a disadvantage, or their nutrients are bound up in ways that you just can't access. They have certain chemical bonds that keep them away from everything else. And so, it's kill or be killed in the wild for plants as well as animals. Latex, we have latex gloves. We get those from plants. That's a special kind of sap from certain plants that when an animal starts eating it and chewing up those leaves, it releases latex. And it's very sticky, it's very tacky. And so it actually glues their mouth shut. And so it's quite an elegant way to stop something from eating you. It was just to glue its mouth shut. So good for the plant, but not so good for the animal because they generally can't get their teeth unstuck and they die of starvation. They could take weeks and then they're going to get killed by something, eaten by something. So it's not a great way to go. So plants have no problem with you dying if it gets to live, right? That's all life. You get too close to a moose or something like that, or a bison out in Yellowstone. It's not trying to eat you. It's not trying to hunt you, but it doesn't want you hunting it. It doesn't want you getting too close to it and it feels threatened. It's going to kill you. It's fine doing that. Plants are the same. They don't mess around. Life in the wild does not mess around. We've been too tame. We've been living in cities and we just don't realize how harsh the world is because we have these protective bubble around us. But those are the realities. So plants have defense chemicals. And like you said, these onions can be very poisonous to dogs. It can be very poisonous to cats. Grapes, avocados, these taste nice to us and we use these all the time. They'll kill your cat and dog, right? So obviously there are poisons in them, right? So it's just that we have more ability to break down those poisons. So people say, well, there's edible plants and non-edible plants. Well, those edible plants are not just edible to everything. Sorry?
I was just going to say that. What about the people who say, well, cows eat grass, cows can do it.
Yeah, they don't eat eucalyptus though, right? And koalas don't eat grass. And there's specific grasses. There are a lot of different kinds of grass plants. And so there's certain grasses like sorghum grass cows can't eat, but other animals can eat. And so the grasses that a cow eats are actually different from the cows that a sheep eats. So you can actually pasture them on the same field and they don't really compete for resources, right? So it's different grasses. And so it is species specific. So all nutrition all across the earth is species specific, except for meat. That's universal because that has nothing in it. It doesn't need to be toxic. I mean, this is meat. So this is apparently toxic for us. This causes cancer. You being made of meat is just going to cause cancer all the time. I guess only if you eat it. All right. So, I mean, like, what kind of sense does that make? We're going to take these exact same nutrients, these exact same building blocks and materials that our body is made out of and that we need in return to grow, build, and maintain our bodies. But somehow that's bad for us. I mean, it's flat out idiotic. And like, I don't blame people for thinking that, because they've been inundated with this misinformation. I do blame the people doing the inundation, because that is flat out fraud, and it's hurting people. And it really bothers me as a doctor, as a clinician, because I see people suffering and hurting, and I just look at them like, none of this needed to happen to you. This never needed to happen. Your father didn't need to be in a nursing home. They never needed to lose their faculties. They never needed to die of this horrible degenerative brain disease or something else, or diabetes, and have their legs amputated and feet amputated and lose their kidneys and all these sorts of things. None of that needed to happen. It was entirely preventable, and it was preventable doing the exact opposite of what you've been told for the last 50 years. And so that bothers me. It bothers me because these other people are telling that. So just real quick to wrap up that thought, all plants are toxic. It's just that certain animals, all of it, every single one, or else they would not be here, right? They have to be able to defend themselves. It's just that certain animals have evolved specific defenses against specific poisons in specific plants, so they can eat that plant and survive and thrive, but they can't eat any other plant. There are 390,000 plants in the world. Koalas eat one. Pandas eat one. Cows, horses, grazing animals, they eat grasses, but they eat certain grasses. They don't eat other sorts of things. The leaves that a gorilla eats are different from the leaves that a giraffe eats. Those are different from the leaves that a deer eats, and so on. You mix those leaves around, and they all get sick or die. So it's very species specific, especially when it comes to plants. So you can't, if your species hasn't evolved to eat a specific plant, that plant is bad for you. And that applies to us as well. We come from an herbivorous past, but it's 8 million years ago. And our ancestors split off because they started eating meat 8 million years ago, and they started eating more and more meat, more and more meat, more and more meat. So something that was taught to me in 7th grade biology was that plants and animals are in an evolutionary arms race. Plants becoming more and more toxic, so less and less animals can eat them, so they can survive and thrive. And animals becoming more and more adapted to specific poisons in specific plants, so they can eat that plant, and that's their dedicated resource. They don't have to compete for resources, and they can survive and thrive. So if you hop out of that evolutionary arms race like we have 8 million years ago, plants are just getting more and more toxic, and we're just over here, just sort of we're maintaining maybe some of these defenses, maybe some ability to detoxify some of these poisons from plants. But at the same time, if it's not a survival advantage to keep and build and maintain these defenses, our body can start losing these things, and these plants go off the other direction. I saw some things from a vegan doctor named Dr. Barnard making some claims about how cyanide, he just ignores that cyanide is in 3,000 different plants and in almonds and cassava. This actually hurts people, it kills people in the tropics when they don't treat it properly. And macadamia nuts and flaxseed, tons of cyanide in flaxseed. And just ignores that and just says, oh, well, I've never heard of someone getting cancer from almonds. Like, have you heard of cyanide? I mean, that's a thing. Like, CDC talks about this all the time. And he said that, but he's actually trying to contend that, well, yes, there's all these different sort of, there's many chemicals in plants, but these are the chemicals that we evolved with. We've adapted with these things. So we're evolved to eat these. So he's saying that we've been in the evolutionary arms race. Okay, first of all, that's against every single piece of data and evidence that is in the literature about our evolutionary past. There isn't a single evolutionary biologist that I know of that isn't inside of an insane asylum that has ever posited that humans are herbivores. And I mean, I guess it's all those cave paintings of salads and macadamia nuts and things like that. I guess that's what he's going on, and so that's completely in contravention of all the known data and literature. And also, let's say that we were herbivores and we grew up with these toxins and chemicals. Name one plant that we eat now that even existed 50,000 years ago or 500,000 years ago when we were evolving into what we are now. Every single plant now is hybridized from something else. Corn is not what corn was naturally. Broccoli is not what broccoli was naturally. All these plants are hybridized from other things. We have GMOs now, but we did natural GMOing previously, where we had specific selection to try to breed different kinds of plants.
Like when they purple or
all sorts of different colors. Yeah. Then the Earl of Orange wanted them all to be orange. And so,
Yeah.
or someone did it as a gift or something like that. Yeah, but that's the thing.
It's
So none of these plants are anything that we have evolved with, right?
it's
So even if
so
you could say that none of these plants were there, so it's just a falsehood altogether.
You've got no idea how many questions I've got in my head that I don't even know what I asked them in, right? Honestly, they've just like gone in my head about it. But I do remember watching you on a video where you said something about how many poisons are in mushrooms.
Mhm. Well, I mean, there's going to be thousands, but as far as carcinogens, when I took cancer biology, the reason I stopped eating plants 20 plus years ago was because my cancer biology professor just flat out told us that he didn't eat any plants at all because, in his words, plants are trying to kill you. And these things are just, they're not out for us. They don't want you to eat them. But because it was a cancer biology class, we were talking about carcinogens and that just normal white table mushrooms, those just things we have just in the stores all the time, they had over 100 known carcinogens. And that was 24 years ago, right? So who knows how many they have now. And there's a study out of UC Berkeley in a series of studies in the late 80s, early 90s, from Professor Bruce Ames at UC Berkeley. They were trying to get rid of everyone was getting sick in the 1980s because they stopped eating meat, they stopped eating fat, started eating a lot more fruits and vegetables, a lot more grains, a lot more seed oils, a lot more sugar. And what else is there to eat? You have to replace all the energy and nutrition that you're getting from meat. That's what they're doing with that. And everyone's getting sick. They're getting fat. They're getting unwell. And they're like, oh, well, what's going on? Must be the pesticides, all these damn pesticides. And he was pointing out, he said, we've been using these same pesticides for 80 years. We've never had this problem before. So he didn't think it was the pesticides. And so he looked at and he did the studies, and they knew of about 42 different toxins, 20 of which were shown to be carcinogenic in the lab. And he found that up just those 42, we know about thousands now, that just those 42, by weight, they were 10,000 times more abundant than the pesticides we're spraying on there. 10,000 times more than the pesticides on there. So there's 99.99% of the pesticides in a plant is already inherent in the plant. And that the naturally occurring toxins were hundreds of times more likely to cause cancer in lab tests than the pesticides, in this case, ALAR, which is what they were trying to ban at the time. And so his argument was like, well, everyone knows that fruits and vegetables are good for you, and they are way worse than the pesticides. So obviously, pesticides can't be all that bad. So they didn't ban the pesticides. But to me, that's assuming a fact that's not in evidence. They're assuming that fruits and vegetables are good for you, therefore pesticides are bad for you. Well, pesticides are known toxins. That's why we use them, because they kill things that are trying to eat that plant. To me, that would raise a question of, are we really sure that fruits and vegetables are good for you? Because what that data showed was that there's 10,000 times more naturally occurring toxins in the plants that we knew of at the time. There's way more now. And they're hundreds of times more carcinogenic. So to me, that says maybe we need to rethink the idea that fruits and vegetables are good for us in the first place.
Quite scary, isn't it? I mean, my next question is a simple one, hopefully. Is it reversible? Like, what about people like me who've just lived on salads for years? I mean, I'm not by any means meat free at all. If anything, I would say I eat more meat, more eggs, more dairy. But I do eat fruit. I do eat salad. I do eat seeds. You do?
Yeah, I do. I just want to know what you eat. Because,
first.
Well, you can ask that, but then I need to know what you eat. Because you just showed me your arm before and I got really distracted. I couldn't think of anything else. And
So first of all, is it reversible if you cut the plants out, and then what do you eat to get a physique like that? I guess.
Yeah.
So if you could, yeah, of course, yes, you can reverse a lot of these things, and that's what we're seeing. We're actually seeing this in clinical trials. So we're seeing that you can reverse type 2 diabetes with an whole food, animal-based, high-fat, meat-based ketogenic diet. So you get rid of the carbohydrates, you get rid of sugar and alcohol, and you eat predominantly meat. Maybe you have a side salad. That's been proven in clinical studies to reverse type 2 diabetes. It's also shown to be probably the best treatment that we have for Alzheimer's at the moment. That diet, that sort of carnivore diet with a side salad, has been shown to be a better treatment for Alzheimer's than every medication ever trialed for Alzheimer's. It's also been shown to full elimination diets where you're just breaking things down to just the bare essentials and cutting out everything else, is reverse Crohn's in clinical trials and randomized controlled trials. Just removing carbohydrates and fiber has been shown to keep Crohn's disease, which is an autoimmune disease of the gut. And it's very harmful. It's very horrible. And they get like 30 bouts of bloody diarrhea a day, and they're in horrible pain. And just removing carbohydrates and fiber, that has been shown to be able to keep Crohn's in remission up to 51 months without medication. And contrasted that with a control group that did not remove fiber and carbs, they stayed in remission without medication on average 0 months. It's not a lot of months, right? So this has a lot of potential here. And so what people say is like, well, the carnivore diet is just anecdotes at this point. Well, it's about, 4 million anecdotes at this point. So, but actually it's not. It's the carnivore diet is a ketogenic diet, and the ketogenic diet is the most rigorously studied diet that has ever existed. We have tried this on thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of trials, randomized controlled trials, interventional trials, experimental trials. We're not doing epidemiological nonsense like they do with plant-based diets and other sorts of diets to try to manipulate people. They give 5,000 nurses, and nurses study more than that. They give several thousand nurses a survey and say, hey, what'd you eat last year? How the hell would they know? You can't possibly come up with every single meal and every single portion, every single thing you've eaten, and it's the entire calendar year. That's impossible. So they know it's going to be inherently inaccurate, and they're just like, great. And they get to fudge with it. Well, we corrected for these things. What does that mean? That means you manipulated the data. That means you changed it. That means you made it look the way you wanted to look. And that's how nutritional epidemiology works. They just basically they're being paid by different organizations that have special interests, and they want to vilify meat, and they want to push a plant-based agenda, and that's a fact. We know that. There's a lot of people that we know specifically doing that, and why. But the ketogenic diet is the most rigorously studied diet in existence. It's won head-to-head against all different sorts of diets, like the DASH diet or low fat, high carb diet with calorie control and all these different sorts of metrics. So it is very similar. Like a carnivore diet is a ketogenic diet. So any study that says, hey, ketogenic diet can do this, you can apply that to a carnivore diet, because a carnivore diet is a ketogenic diet, but it's the type of ketogenic diet that was studied in these studies. Because ketogenic diet, all that means is you cut out carbs, right? And you're in a state of nutritional ketosis, and you have high ketones and low blood sugar and low insulin, right? But how do you do that? You get rid of carbs. What do you replace it with? Fat and protein. Where's the fat and protein coming from? Very difficult to do that on a plant-based diet. You have to be basically drinking canola oil and just taking just tons and tons and tons of supplements and things like that. It's not really feasible. I mean, maybe avocados and other sort of fattier sort of things, but it's difficult. It's not that easy to do. And so they don't. None of those studies use a plant-based ketogenic diet. Every single one replace the carbohydrates with fatty meat, right? So they have fatty meat, and then you have some side salads or whatever, if you want them, but you don't actually have to.
What about dairy, Anthony? What about eating like cream, milk, that kind of thing?
So I tend to avoid milk because I do try to keep this ketogenic. I think that a ketogenic metabolism is actually, so I think that that's our primary metabolic state. When I was taking biochemistry, 20 years ago or more, it was called a fed state and a fasting state. And it's just, oh, when you eat, your biochemistry looks like this, your metabolism looks like this. And when you don't eat for over 24 hours, it looks like this other thing. It's completely different. It's wildly different. And so the problem is that they fail to recognize that when you eat anything on earth except carbohydrates, it also looks like you haven't eaten for 24 hours. And so they sort of, I think that was misnamed. And by the time we were able to study biochemistry at a molecular level, everyone was eating carbohydrates. And so that's how it looked. Oh, when you eat, it looks like that. And they didn't realize that, no, actually, there's something going on here. Basically, all animals in the wild are in that starvation state, right? Because 70%. Sorry, babies, yeah, they have to be. So fetuses in the womb are in ketosis, and then breastfeeding infants are in ketosis, and they need to be, because those ketones are vital for the brain. as babies and as adults. You see people with autism as adults going on ketogenic diets, keto carnivore diets, and they actually start recovering a lot of their symptoms. And some people actually become fully functional after having very, very serious issues. The earlier you get them, the better they're going to do, because you can actually get further development of their brain. It's not just optimizing their brain, where it ended up. But kids really need to be in ketosis, because that's how the brain grows. Your brain, certainly the cortex, optimally and primarily runs on ketones. So we think, no, 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 your brain needs glucose, so you have to eat sugar. Well, even if that were true, you would never need to eat sugar, because you make glucose, you make all the blood sugar you always will ever need. But your cortex, 2/3 of your brain, primarily runs on ketones. Why do I say that? Because if you have enough ketones and you have enough glucose, your brain will only run on the ketones. It has glucose available, but it only runs on the ketones. That means it's a preference. That's its primary energy source. It's only when those ketones start going down that you start replacing that with glucose. So even if you have an abundance of glucose, it's only taking ketones. And so that's obviously showing that's a primary source. Then further, those ketones cross the blood-brain barrier. Ketones are basically like the energy product of fat. Fat is a storage, and then you make those into ketones, and we use ketones as energy. They can reconstitute into fatty acids in your brain, and that makes up the physical structures of your brain. Your brain is 60-70% fat. And so you need those ketones crossing into the brain, A, to power it and run it optimally, and B, to actually have the physical structures and building materials of the brain. Another reason it's very important to be in ketosis as a kid, or even as an adult, or anytime, is that when your insulin, there's something called autophagy. Have you guys heard of that?
Yeah, where your cells kind of get rid of the bad cells and keep the good ones.
See, I'm letting her answer that. I'm like, no, I've never heard of that.
So autophagy.
3-day fast. So when you're going to, I do 3-day fast for, well, we say autophagy over here, but yeah, same thing.
Yeah. So same thing. Autophagy. You're self-eating. Phagy means eating, right? So you're eating yourself, right? And so you're taking down some of these older cells. You sometimes call them like zombie cells, or there's other names for them as well. But more importantly, I think, is that it actually can swap out some of the organelles inside your cells. So things like your mitochondria, other sort of organelles, they just get worn down, broken down, and old and rusty. And just like the part on your car, if your fan belt goes out, you don't want to just get a new car. You just replace the fan belt, right? So you have some buggy mitochondria, you just swap out the mitochondria for better ones, and they have better, happier mitochondria. The mitochondria are extremely important. They make the energy for the cells called ATP, but they also run the cells. They physically move inside the cell, and they turn this on, turn that off, turn this on, turn that off. And you have hundreds of these little suckers, and sometimes thousands.
Their own DNA, haven't they, mitochondria? There is mitochondrial DNA as well.
There is, yeah. So they code, they sort of have about 36 different genes in them, and they also have, they also put some of their mitochondrial DNA in our own nuclei as well. And so there's mitochondrial DNA in there. But they code for things like testosterone and other hormones. Like, they're very, very important. If your mitochondria are worn down, you're not going to be making your hormones properly either, because that's where the DNA is for it. But also, they run the cells. They're moving around, turning things on and off. And so if they're not working properly, they're going to get there a bit late, and they're going to not produce enough energy, or they're going to produce it more slowly. So it's a day late and a dollar short, right? And so things aren't going to work properly, and the brain's not going to work properly. It's not going to develop properly. So autophagy, you would go through fasting, right? But there's that word again, fasting. So what's good about fasting and autophagy is that you're just not eating, and you're starving, and your body's like, oh my God, we have to find food. Eat this mitochondria. Well, not really, because it then replaces that mitochondria. It's just swapping that out. So it's actually not a net gain in energy. It's not taking that and then using energy somewhere else. It's just swapping it out for a new mitochondria. And there's mitogenesis. They make more mitochondria. So in fact, you're actually using more energy in that metabolic state, because you're making more organelles, and you're making more cells, and you're turning on your stem cells, and you're repairing and replacing different sorts of tissues and structures. It's not fasting that's important. It's being in that metabolism that we call a fasting metabolism. It's just about having your insulin be low, because insulin blocks autophagy. Okay. And so,
you just carry on, just so I can clarify it. Does that mean you are in a ketogenic state through the carnivore diet, you don't need to fast?
Correct. Yeah.
I'm doing
So studies,
as well.
yeah, for autophagy anyway, right? I mean, I just don't think that there's really going to be much, physiological processes in our body that are designed that, oh, well, you have to just not eat. Like you basically have to wait for a famines for like things to turn on in your body. That doesn't make any sense. You're going to be optimal when you're able to get resources and just live optimally, So it's not like lions get sicker the more successful they are at hunting. Like, no, they're actually more healthy and more robust. And the same thing is going to be for us as well. But specifically for autophagy, no, you don't need to do that because it's insulin that turns that off. So when you're eating carbohydrates, it just raises your insulin. Insulin is a very busy hormone. It works on over 100 different mechanisms in the body. We think of it as just as lowering your blood sugar. And some people know about it like, oh, well, actually, it helps protein get in there too. Yeah, there's over 100 other things as well. And so if your insulin's at a 5, which is good number for your insulin, it's affecting everything at a 5. But then you eat, some pasta or bread, it's at a 35, it's affecting everything at a 35, right? So that's out of balance now. I even had a gentleman that came into my office last month. His fasting insulin was 72, right? It should never be above 9, really. And this guy was way up there. So it's affecting everything at a 72 all the time. And then he eats and it's affecting everything at 102. So obviously that's going to cause a lot of metabolic and physiological problems. Studies have shown that ketogenic diets, like a carnivore diet, because again, it is an animal-based, meat-based ketogenic diet with salad if you want it, but you don't have to have it. You don't have to have a side salad. So it's carnivore light, basically. So carnivore light diet has been shown to, after 3-4 months on these diets, being in a state of nutritional ketosis, to at the end of it, you'll have 4 times the number of mitochondria, and they're 4 times as effective. So there's a massive, massive, massive increase. And so people go through periods of fasting. And if you're eating carbs, great idea. But if you don't eat carbs, you don't need to do that. You're constantly going through autophagy. You're constantly turning over your cells. You're constantly turning over your organelles. And in a developing brain, that is vital. So in autism specifically, and mental health disorders in general, this has been shown to be strongly linked to dysfunctioning mitochondria, and you'll get misdevelopment of your neurons, and you'll get dysfunction of those neurons as well, and you can get these mental health issues, but also the different sort of plant toxins causing neuroinflammation and other sorts of problems as well can all cause this. But there's a great book by a professor of psychiatry from Harvard named Dr. Chris Palmer, and it's called Brain Energy. It's a masterclass on the mitochondria and how they work inside your cells and how they work specifically inside your neurons. I've had him on my podcast and YouTube channel. Very interesting conversation and very interesting book. And he's basically showing all the evidence for this about how we actually have data going back 20 years and studies going back 20 years linking schizophrenia and bipolar and major depression to dysfunctions in the mitochondria. And so he puts people on a ketogenic carnivore diet. He actually used to do a carnivore diet. Now he's a bit more keto, but very close to that. And he finds that you can actually reverse schizophrenia, major depression, OCD, bipolar, all these other sorts of ADHD, and even autism. And there was a study out of Texas A&M that showed that vegans and vegetarian parents were having kids with much higher rates of autism, and they found that it was specifically due to malnutrition and insufficient, inadequate levels of carnitine, which is an amino acid that's vital for the normal functioning of your mitochondria. Going back to that again, and that we normally make it. So vegans will say, no, you can get all the amino acids that you need from plants. Well, no, actually not quite, because you can't get carnitine. They say, well, that's not essential. It is actually. It's essential for 30% of humanity. Only 70% of people make enough carnitine. And in fact, more carnitine from your diet is better. And so, but fully 1/3 of the human race cannot make enough carnitine. It has to get it from their diet. And so this is not something that we would see all that often back when people understood the importance of eating meat only 50 years ago. And so 50 years ago in the 1970s, the autism rate was 1 in 10,000. Now it's 1 in 34 in America, 1 in 22 males.
And
Sorry?
people say, don't they, that it's because we're now managing to diagnose it better, and that's just another bullshit.
Nonsense.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
You know,
I mean,
I've always said about being like ADHD,
Yeah.
and I'm probably undiagnosed ADHD, but I did a vegan diet for quite a few years ago. And I wonder if that made it worse.
Yeah, you're screwed.
No, I can reverse it. I can reverse
Yeah,
it. So it's
yeah.
fine.
Can I ask you something? Because I have been on, we've both actually done this. We have both done a keto diet as well. So I've dabbled over years with lots of different things. And honestly, my preference would be keto and swaying towards carnivore. I'm a bit scared of doing carnivore. I've got an 8-year-old, right? So that's, you know, this whole balanced diet thing that we have going on. I always think, oh, if I take his fruit away, if I take his vegetables away, am I doing the right thing? So that's kind of one thing. But then I've just heard something. I just want to clarify it. If you're saying that we make more mitochondria in the state when you're eating more meat, or you're in the fasted state, whatever it is, surely that meat to me says actually you're making more energy. You're releasing more energy from your cells. So it can't be that taking glucose and carbohydrates out of your diet leave you fatigued, can it? That doesn't happen.
No, it's the exact opposite. No, you have just boundless energy. Brain fog just goes away completely. You have so much more energy. As an athlete, I played professional rugby for 10 years before medical school. 5 of those years was on a strict carnivore diet. That was the 5 years of my life. I've never been more athletic, felt better, trained harder, was able to just go. I was at a dead sprint all day. I could not wear myself out. I could not run out of energy. I could push myself so much harder than everybody else. And so I was getting fitter and fitter and fitter and fitter and fitter so much faster than everybody else. And then I was actually playing rugby in England in the National One, now called Championship League. And they sort of had a different selection of meat. I wasn't able to get sort of the stuff I was used to. And just sort of out of convenience, I started buying some chicken drumsticks that had a bit of crumbs on them. And I was just like, ugh, and I was just like eating just eggs and some of that and other sorts of things. But every 3 days a week or something like that, I'd have those chicken things. And just because they were just easy, they were already pre-cooked and all that sort of stuff. And so I remember thinking to myself, I was like, oh God. And same argument that people make now when I tell them that plants have toxins, say, oh, well, dose makes the poison. Okay, what's the dose? You don't know what the dose. I mean, that's the follow-up to that sentence. You cannot say dose makes a poison. It's okay. Well, what's the dose then? You're saying that is poisonous at a certain level. What is the level? Because this is something that people are eating, and you're telling millions of people it's fine, eat it because it's not poisonous until you hit this level. Well, what is that level? Because there's again nearly a million of these damn things, and there's cyanide in some of these things, and I can tell you the level that can kill you, and I can tell you the level. So I can tell you what dose makes one, yeah, and I can tell you where that is. It's not much, and so I always said that to myself. I was like, oh, have some breading. I'm like, oh, there's toxins in there, but dose makes the poison. Is it all that bad? And I convinced myself. I was like, okay, I'll go off it, and well, not off it, but I'll just have this part of it. I'll eat meat, but I'll have those little breading. It absolutely took me off my game. I wasn't just boundless energy, just feeling superhuman all the time. I was sore and getting achy. I didn't know what the hell. I thought I had injuries. I'd never been sore. I'd never had soreness before. And all of a sudden I'm just sore all the time and like have these like groin strains. I was like, what the hell is going on? I thought I needed surgery or something. I didn't know what the hell was going on. And I could still play. I was still doing well. It was just that stupid breading on this stuff. And so it actually does affect you. And I didn't realize that. But no, you have tons of energy. And it wasn't until I was 38 that I then looked back and realized, like, holy crap, no, humans are carnivores as a species. That's just the kind of animal we are. And that's what I was doing for those 5 years. I've always felt the best. I've never felt better in my entire life than those 5 years. And I've always been trying to get back there. And I've never been able to figure it out. That's what it was. I knew it. I knew plants were trying to kill me, get rid of these stupid things. And I just dropped it. And I just dropped I was already on like a ketogenic diet, even though I wasn't like doing a ketogenic diet. I just realized that eating carbs made my back hurt more. So I'm like, I'm not going to eat that crap. And so I was just eating spinach, kale, and broccoli, and then lean meat. And I was trying to cut down the meat to try to lean up and get back on the field, and dropped all the greens and just ate massive amounts of fatty meat. and I probably quintupled my caloric intake, and I lost 23 pounds in 10 days. And then I just started shredding fat and stacking on muscle. And after 2 weeks, I said, I feel fantastic. I'm gonna go back out. And I started playing professional rugby again at 38. Felt like a superhero. Felt like I was 22 again. I was able to perform like I was 22 again, except I had, 16 more years of experience. So like, that's fun. And when you talk about like a balanced diet, that's always something that gets thrown out. Well, we need a balanced diet, a balanced diet. What that means is that we don't know what nutrients we actually need. We don't actually know what we actually have to have. So we just try to get everything, something from everywhere, and just try to get all the nutrients. And that presupposes that it's okay to eat anything. Everything's safe. You're just trying to get enough nutrients. As long as you get the nutrients, everything else is okay. But that's not, unfortunately, the situation we're dealing with, because yes, you can get nutrients from different things. You can get iron, zinc, magnesium from dirt, if you want to. I wouldn't recommend it. And but while you can get these nutrients from different sorts of things, you get the bad with the good, because they do come with toxins. So it's not just about getting nutrients, it's about avoiding toxins as well. And so when people say, well, you need a balance, I always ask, a balance of what? Poison? You want a balance of poison and good things? You want the poison to balance out the good things, so you don't want to get too much good thing. Oh, that'd be unbalanced, So you have to toxin, you have some sort of toxin as well. That's the only thing. If you want a balance of nutrients. What's that?
So brainwashed, aren't we? Like we are completely
Oh, we are.
brainwashed.
Yeah, it goes back a long way too.
I want to ask you something. We're not going to finish just this second, but I want to know, if I was going to say to you, what's the day in your food and drink and supplements look like? Are you able to pinpoint that? Like, what do you eat? Do you take supplements? What do you drink?
My question.
Sorry, I didn't say that. Yeah, together we want to know.
Yeah. No, I don't take any supplements. I don't take any medication. I just eat meat. I generally eat red meat. And so I'm typically not hungry early in the day. It's 7 p.m. now. I haven't eaten yet today. I'm not really hungry. If you eating high density quality nutrients, then you don't need to eat as much or as often. And so I find that when I do that, I eat fatty meat until it stops tasting good. And that's a different thing than just eating until you feel like you could stop, which is what we normally have to do to stay a bit trim. You keep eating until your body tells you that's enough. And if you're eating only meat, you can do that. If you're eating carbs, if you're eating dairy, that can sort of throw things off as well. But certainly if you're eating carbs, that screws up your hunger signals, and you overeat, and you eat more than your body actually desires and needs. And so if you're not doing that, if you're only eating fatty meat, you'll get satiated and it will stop tasting good. At first it'll taste amazing. If it doesn't taste amazing, if it doesn't taste good, you're not hungry. That's all there is to it. If a steak doesn't taste good, you are not hungry. Well, but I haven't eaten today. Doesn't matter. You're not hungry. You don't need to eat. Tomorrow it'll taste good. I promise you that. And if it tastes good, you're hungry, you keep eating until it stops tasting good, because every bite tastes slightly less good. You get negative feedback. And so that's how you know it's something that's probably good for us, as opposed to like drugs that just like the more you do, the more you want to do, right? This is the more you do, the less you want to do. And you get to a point where you just have a bite and it just tastes like cardboard. Why is that? It's the same steak cooked at the same time in the same conditions. It tasted amazing here. And now it's just like, ugh, don't really want to do that. You can overeat, but you have to force yourself to. I mean, you really would not enjoy it. And so you just stop. You get to that cardboard taste, and that's your body telling you, we're done. And it will start tasting bad after that if you keep pushing it. And I have patients that come in sometime going like, oh my God, I'm just getting nauseous and this, that, and the other. It's like, okay, what about right at the beginning of the meal? Like, yeah, it tastes great then, but I get halfway through and it's really hard to finish. It takes me 2 hours to finish. And I tell them, it's like, well, actually you were finished 2 hours ago, because that was your body telling you under no uncertain circumstance, stop eating, and they're going to make you sick. Like, just stop eating. And that's what animals get. They have some sort of internal monitor that tells them, yeah, that's enough. And I think it's taste. It's certainly taste in us anyway. And so you keep eating fatty meat until it stops tasting good. If you do that, generally not hungry for 24 hours, sometimes longer. If you're working out a lot, you're lifting weights, and your body wants to put on muscle, and you don't have a lot of excess energy on your body and excess adipose tissue, then you will almost certainly have to eat more meat. And so if I'm working out a lot, I'm lifting weights, then I tend to eat twice a day. And so I can easily double the amount of meat that I get in. But when I eat the same thing. I eat meat and or eggs and I eat until I stops tasting good. Except sort of in the day, if you eat until you're stuffed in the morning or at any time really, you might get a bit lethargic. You can dedicate up to 40% of your blood supply to your intestines to digest and absorb that food. And so that's blood that's not available to your body and brain. And so it's you're going to be a bit more lethargic. You're going to be a bit more tired, and you're going to go into a rest and digest mode. And your body's going to say, "Hey, we got our energy for the day. Just chill out." So I eat sort of a bit less than I may want, and then I don't get that same reaction. And then at the end of the day, I eat until I have leftovers. I try to endeavor to have leftovers. If I finish a steak and go like, "Yeah, that was pretty good," I make another steak, and then I may eat half of it or a quarter of it, and I put the rest in the fridge and eat that tomorrow. So, but that's what I eat. It's red meat predominantly, and I don't eat anything else.
What do you drink? Do you drink coffee, tea, alcohol, water? What do you have?
No, yeah, just water. So, I think it's and I like drinking. I mean, I passed out drunk at my first bus stop at 14. So, I grew up playing rugby and and then but I drank in high school, college. I went to college early and drank at these parties and drank with the rugby team, and then I turned 21 and I was sick for a month and I needed antibiotics and all these other sorts of things to clear my lungs. And I was playing Premiership, so I was like, I can't give up my spot. I got to keep playing. And I drank one night after the game, and I just felt just fully sick again. I'm like, okay, I can't do this. And so I have to be fully clear of this stuff. And before I drink again, and it was like a month before that happened. And I was just playing, even though I was sick as hell, I had like very bad pneumonia. I was coughing up blood. I just playing out of my skin. I just felt amazing. And so I just said, okay, I'm just going to try not drinking the rest of the season and see how I go. That just happened to be the same time that I went carnivore. And my professor said that. And so it's just a very serendipitous timing. And so I just turned into just a superhuman. And I just felt amazing. So I think it's as important. And I basically haven't drank during the rugby season since then. And now I just basically don't drink. Maybe like once every 2 years or something like that. I have like clear spirits or something like that. And but it costs you. I find that I don't have the same energy levels for 3 full weeks. So something has to be worth a month of me not feeling my best in order to drink. And there's not many things that amount to that. So I think it's as important what not to eat as what to eat. So you eat meat, you eat fatty meat until it stops tasting good. You eat the type of meat that you enjoy, that makes you feel the best, and that you can afford or have access to. For me, that's beef. And so that's what I prefer and I feel the best on. And but whatever it is, you get to decide that. If you have autoimmune diseases, you really need to stick to the red meat and avoid eggs and dairy and other sorts of things. But it's just as important what not to eat as what to eat, because what you're eating, the meat, that's where you get your nutrients. That's all great. But the other things cause harm. And so my rule for myself is no plants or mushrooms, no sugar or any sweeteners, nothing artificial. And that goes for sauces, seasonings, and drinks as well. So my litmus test would go against that. So you say, what about coffee? Well, it's a plant. Well, what about honey? That's from bees. It's a sugar. What about stevia? It's a plant and it's an artificial sweetener. So double no. And what about red 40? Definitely that's artificial something. I'm not going to do that. So I just eat whole meat and I just drink water.
Do you not feel restricted? Like, do you not feel like you miss out?
No.
I don't know like you miss out.
I was going to say that. I think it just looks such a picture of health.
Yeah.
Like, we spoke to other people before, and we did a podcast with the sugar-free guy.
Yeah, and I think you'll know Brian from Sapien.
Yeah.
Interviewed
Brian Sanders. Yeah, he's a nice guy.
What interesting for me is the supplements and not needing them, because I spend an absolute fortune on supplements.
I spent £160 last week on them.
Yeah, I spend a lot,
Yeah.
and I
big
ate
business.
a lot. But I don't think I have enough fat in me. I'm just going to eat beef now for a week and see how I go.
What is there any difference for like men and women? Because we're young women, we're women of a kind of category, and obviously you get told brain fog, have some lion's mane. You get told eat your fruit and your veg for your skin. Make sure you're getting your vitamin C.
Are you avoiding the word menopause?
Well, no. Yeah, no, I just don't want to make only about menopause. But menopause of women, pregnant women, whatever.
Yeah. So you will never have better skin than on a carnivore diet when you're actually eating actual real meat and animal fat. You get actual collagen from meat. You don't need to make it with de novo with vitamin C. You get it in the food that you're eating. You get the fat and you get that's amazing for your skin. If you ever want the best skin of your life, go on a carnivore diet and put tallow on your skin. Your skin will never look or feel better in your entire life than if you put tallow, just straight up cooking tallow on your skin, on your face. You will not, yeah, you will not break out. It's breaking out is hormonal more than anything. Unless you get blackheads of dirt and stuff like that stuck in it, but this isn't going to do that. In fact, tallow is the Latin for sebum because it's so chemically similar to our own natural oils. So they named the rendered cow fat tallow because of that. So it actually makes sense. It's just going to work very well for your skin. No, but it's amazing. Your skin will be amazing. You ask yourself this in the wild, again, going back to nature, because you don't need a damn study to understand what I mean, all these animals in the wild somehow know what to do. They don't have all these wonderful nutritionists and scientists doing these studies. It's just amazing how they even live. And yet they're the ones that know what the hell to do. No animal is confused about what they eat in the wild. None. No animal is going, oh, what I have to do this. Oh man, I have, I'm gonna have a health coach telling them that, to eat things that don't taste naturally good to them or do things that go against their nature. That doesn't make any damn sense. Plants are bitter. There's a reason for that. Your brain is telling you there's poison in there. Don't eat it. You get anything you give to an infant that has never had solid food before, anything that it cries and freaks out at, run. Like just that's poison, right? And there's outliers. Obviously, you can give them sugar and things like that, but sugar is a drug. And junk food and things like that. You have these food scientists. They're very clever people that figure out how to get these chemicals that we associate with some sort of positive urge to eat more of it, and they put those in those chips and all these sorts of things. It's called an evolutionary trap. They're baiting into that biological circuit that says, ooh, that's safe, eat that. Then you eat that, but your stomach actually has sensors to tell your brain, hey, these are the nutrients that are in there. There's no damn nutrients in there, so you're still hungry, so you keep eating, you keep eating, you keep eating, you keep eating because you're not getting any damn nutrients. And so that's called an evolutionary trap. And so, you don't need to do that. So, no, the best you'll ever do is on a carnivore diet, and that's because that's our species specific diet. That's our species appropriate diet. Look again out in nature. Is there a difference between what female lions eat and what male lions eat? Female koalas, female zebras, male zebras, females of any species, and the males of any species. It's the same thing. It's a species specific thing. It's not a gender specific thing. Mammals drink their mother's milk until they're weaned onto their mother's diet, and they eat that diet for the rest of their life, and they wean their children onto that same diet. It's that simple, boys and girls, or anything in between. It's exactly as it looks in nature, and that's exactly like it is for us. So you just eat what humans are designed to eat, and what are humans designed to eat, what we've been eating for millions of years. And as much as Dr. Barnard wishes it were true, it was not plants. We've been eating meat predominantly. We've been apex predators, top of the food chain for millions of years. That is what all the highest level of evidence shows. And so that's going to be good for men and women at every stage of your life, apart from nursing. Nursing, you want to be drinking the milk of your carnivorous mom.
So interesting. Can I ask you before we go on, because you might think it's a bit of a daft question, tallow, what does it smell like? If I'm going to be rubbing this on my skin, what am I going to smell like?
It's very neutral. There really isn't a smell to it.
I smell like a goose.
No, it's important to me that though. I don't want to, and you've probably never been told this before, but you actually sound like my mum, right? Because I've just been away with my mum, and she's doing the carnivore diet, and all she's done when we went away every day. I'm not even hungry yet, Lisa. I would normally be hungry, but she's been doing it about 3 months, and she just kept telling me how not hungry she were. I'm like, are you sure you're not hungry?
Because even though I did keto, you're not hungry. I was eating once a day.
Yeah, I am honestly. There's not many podcasts that we do where I'm itching as much as I've really enjoyed this conversation. I want to go now so I can go and get a steak and find
Good.
thing you say to Lisa, though, she does get inspired to sort of go, oh, you know what, I'm going to try.
I'm doing it.
But you don't add herbs, spices, nothing. You're just literally eating steak.
Yeah, salt to taste if you want.
Because I think when you do that, like I can taste it now. Like I'm excited to have a steak with nothing on it. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, and your taste change as well. Like now, I really enjoy the taste of meat, and you're tasting the nutrients that your brain is looking for, and so and your taste and your palate changes and goes back to what it really should be. So you really like the taste of meat, at least I do, and other people say the same thing, and so you don't want anything adulterating it. You know, when something comes on with some spices or seasonings at a restaurant, I'm like, oh God, okay.
Yeah,
You know, it's
what steak
yeah.
What kind of steak, and do you have it rare, medium rare?
I do. I generally keep it rare, and which is difficult because you know my girlfriend likes it more on the medium well side of things, which is I think is just blasphemy. You know, I mean, this poor thing died for us to live, and now we're like desecrating its remains. Yeah, so I like it. I like it rare, sort of seared on the outside and rare. Yeah, but usually like ribeyes. I eat a lot of ribeyes. But anything can be good. We have like a bunch of rump steak that I've been aging, and so the only thing in my fridge is meat anyway, right? So I've got things wet aging, I've got things dry aging. I've got like Michelin star quality steaks every single night. So like there isn't a restaurant I've been to in my life that makes a better steak than I make on a daily basis. And when I have people come over and they start eating these things, they're like, "Oh my God, you eat this every day?" And I was just like, "Yeah." It's just like, well, no wonder this is all you eat. I wouldn't eat anything else either. And then, you know, it's just when you only eat meat, you get really good at cooking meat and you don't want anything to mess around with it. The meat is amazing.
I bet your fridge looks like a murderer's fridge.
People said that. They're like, oh my God, are those human? Are those bodies? You know, I was just like, no, they're not. But,
you know, people say it's an expensive diet, but when that's all you're eating, it really isn't, is it?
No.
No, you're eating much less often. You're not having all the snacks or the Starbucks or the coffees and the thises and the that's and whatever that was, you know, all that sort of stuff. Yeah, all that stuff adds up. And so, you know, I go to Costco and I buy a whole bunch of like ribeye loins and I get them in bulk, so it's like half the price of if you're just buying them in steaks. And I have those in the fridge and I'm keeping them in the cryovac. That's all wet aging, and then I cut them up into steaks. Maybe lightly salt them to your choosing. I don't really use much salt anymore. And you put them on a wire rack on a cooking sheet, not touching. You want air circulating all around so it dries out. If it dries out, there won't be any bacteria. If there's moisture, if it's touching, then you can grow bacteria. So you want to dry it out, and then you know that's your meal prep. Just dry overnight changes it completely. It's 100 times better just doing that overnight. But if you do it, yeah. But if you do that for several days, it gets even better. It dries out more, and you get this amazing crust. It browns so well, and it's just delicious. It's absolutely fantastic. So it's just everything is just perfectly wet aged and dry brined steak, and it's just absolutely incredible. It browns beautifully. I have some videos on my YouTube channel where I go through this process and people see my fridge and it's pretty dramatic. But, you know, I have all these things aging and different things, and I have, you know, 2 weeks supply of cut up steaks. That's my meal prep for 2 weeks. It's done, right? I just grab a big steak out, you know, throw it down. Maybe if I'm working out a lot, I take out two. And that's it. It's easy. It's so easy. You just cook a steak. It's done. There's no cleaning. There's no prep. I've got, you know, just like basically minimal, you know, no dishes. You don't have all this gear out there, flour everywhere, and all this mess to clean up. You just take a steak out, you put it in the pan, you put it on your plate, you're done. And it's amazing. And it's like you're just the most amazing steak that you've ever had in your entire life. And I spend what would be a typical sort of thing at Costco would be like $800 Australian, which is like I don't know, so 550 American. That lasts me 6 weeks. It's nothing. I'm like spending less than sorry?
80 quid roughly, £480 in England. That
yeah, and that lasts me 6 weeks. Right?
What would you recommend?
And I'm eating Michelin star ribeye every night.
I've got to say, say we go to Costco and we do the same as you at home. My husband does the same, buys the big, massive ribeye and cuts it all up. You don't prepare it quite like that. So I'm going to get him on your YouTube channel.
We'll put the link to that on the podcast notes. Would you recommend doing like a steak and water challenge then, like a 30-day steak and water challenge?
Yeah, I think 30 days is a good one. You know, I do a sort of challenge group. It's called How to Carnivore. It's on howtocarnivore.com. We do like a 30-day challenge. It starts at the first of the month every month, and there's a lot of learning modules and videos and things like that people can go through. And there's like a community and weekly check-ins to answer questions and things like that. And it works really well. And I think that 30 days is a good chunk, because the first 2 weeks, it takes about 2 weeks to get all this junk out of your system. It takes about 3 weeks for alcohol to get out of your system. And after that, you just feel like a different breed of human. Your body's just working in ways that it just never, worked that well before. And you just start seeing what life could have been like for your entire life. And most people get pretty pissed off. I was pissed off. I looked back at my entire life and realized that I'd been sick and felt like crap my entire life. And except for those 5 years, those golden 5 years in my early 20s and right now. And so now I've been on it over 6 years. I feel absolutely amazing. And I just keep getting better and better and better. I'm 44 years old. I don't need to work out to stay lean and muscular. I haven't been in the gym in months. When I do, I hit it hard. I can hit it harder than I could at any other age in my life, except in my early 20s when I was doing the same diet. At 27, I feel better now at 44 than I did at 27 playing professional rugby, and in great shape. And I looked like I was in great shape. 2 weeks out of the gym, and I'd start softening up. I'd start putting on flab. I'd start losing muscle. And I was eating very clean. I just ate meat and some veggies, right? I wasn't like a big carb fiend or a sweet tooth. I wasn't a big drinker or anything. I never drank during the rugby season. And so, just eating just slightly off with just some veggies, because you just have to eat these things. That's what would happen. If I stopped working out, I started getting out of shape. Whereas now it doesn't matter. I look like this all the time, no matter what.
This would be great for some of our community, because Be Sober is already people who don't drink alcohol. So they already want to live better lifestyle. They already want to cut things out and try new ways of living. So I think we need your link for your group and challenge on email, and definitely a link to your podcast as well, which is the Plant Free podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, it's called the Plant Free MD, and for obvious reasons. And my YouTube channel is just my name, Anthony Chaffee MD, and that's the same as my Instagram. And people on Twitter, it's Anthony_Chaffee. So those are my main ones, and then people can find the other ones through those as well.
That's brilliant. Thank you so much. It's been really eye-opening. I've absolutely loved it. I've loved talking to you. So thank you for taking the time to talk to us. We'll definitely share all that. And I think we'll get some of our community doing. Yeah. I'm gonna, so it's not complicated, because some big words that I struggle with. I'm just gonna do steak and water for 30 days. I'm gonna give it a go. I'm gonna do eggs as well, because I like eggs. Oh, I do have eggs before.
So make sure you get enough fat as well. Make sure you get enough fat. So you need a lot of fat. Fat is what moves your digestion. So if you're getting hard, dry, constipated stools, by definition, you are not eating enough fat, because your body has a limited capacity to absorb fat. And after that, it spills over. You just can't absorb it anymore. So people say, oh, you don't want to eat too much. But yes, fat's okay, but you don't want too much. There's no such thing. It's physiologically impossible to absorb more fat than your body wants.
The fat on your meat and the tallow that you've talked about, is that how you cook? Cooking any oils?
That's how, I'll cook in tallow and put it on my skin, and probably not at the same time. But the same stuff, And then I, cook it up in tallow. You sort of pour those drippings on over the steak. Sometimes if it's a bit leaner of a cut, I'll slice a chunk of grass-fed butter and put that on as well. And you get that fat up. So you want to make sure you're having soft stools, and it can be infrequent. Like it's normal to go only once or twice a week, because you're absorbing 98% of the meat you're eating. Unlike plants, you're absorbing only 5% of the plants you're eating. 95% have to go out. Where in meat, it's only 2% going out. And if you cut out the gristle, it's even less. And so it's very normal to not have to go as often and have a lower volume, but they should still be soft. And if they're not soft, it's because you're not eating enough fat.
That's so interesting. Also really awkward. I'm not good at talking about poos.
I really don't care.
It's giving me anxiety.
No, honestly, this has been just absolutely eye-opening. I'm so grateful that you agreed to come on. It's just been great, hasn't it?
Yeah,
A really good podcast. Thank you.
No problem. Thank you very much. I appreciate you having me on.
We'll update you and send you some before and after pictures, and then you can say, look, I helped these two weird women in the UK.
Definitely. Yeah. No, that'd be great. Please do.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah. You're welcome. Thank you.